After this, Absalom, the son of David, had a lovely sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Amnon was so distressed over his sister Tamar that he became sick, for she was a virgin, and it was improper for Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jodab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother. Now Jodab was a very crafty man, and he said to him, "Why are you, the king's son, becoming thinner day by day? Will you not tell me?" But Amnon said to him, "I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." So Jonadab said to him, "Lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill. And when your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and give me food, and prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand.'" Then Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. And when the king came to him, Amnon said to the king, "Please let Tamar, my sister, come and make a couple of cakes for me in my sight, that I may eat of her hand." And David sent home to Tamar, saying, "Now go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him." So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was lying down. And then she took flour and kneaded it, and baked cakes in his sight, and baked the cakes. And she took the pan and placed them out before him, but he refused to eat. Then Amnon said, "Have everyone go away from me." And they all went out from him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into my bedroom, that I may eat it from your hand." And Tamar took the cakes which he had made, and brought them to Amnon her brother in the bedroom. Now when she had brought them for him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, "Come and lie with me, my sister." But she answered him, "No, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing should be done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. Where can I take my shame? And as for you, you would be like some of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you." However, he would not heed her voice, and being stronger than she, he forced her and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he loved her. And Amnon said to her, "Arise, be gone." And she said to him, "No, indeed, this evil of sending me away is worse than the other that you did to me." But he would not listen to her. Then he called his servant who attended him and said, "Here, put this woman out, away from me, and bolt the door behind her." Now she had on a robe of many colors, and the king's virgin daughters wore such apparel. And as the servant put her out and bolted the door behind her, then Tamar put ashes on her head, and tore her robe of many colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went away crying bitterly. And Absalom her brother said to her, "Has Amnon your brother been with you? But now hold your peace, my sister, he is your brother. Do not take this thing to heart." So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard all these things, he was very angry. And Absalom spoke to his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad. But Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. I've titled this message tonight, Rebellion. Rebellion. You see, Absalom was the full brother of Tamar. Amnon was the oldest son, and presumably he would get special treatment from his father David. But Amnon, the oldest son, raped Tamar, which was his half-sister, and then sent her away in a very evil way. And what he did was very wicked, and it was very, very shameful. When David had heard of this thing, he became extremely angry. But Absalom, the full brother of Tamar, when he saw that this had happened and he heard what had happened, he hated Amnon and would not speak to him. He had his sister live with him, And he just got more and more angry, more and more bitter. And he was figuring out, trying to understand what he could do to retaliate, because as far as he was concerned, he was getting by with it. He wasn't being punished for what he had done. And this thing is starting to simmer again. It is boiling over, and he is becoming bitter because of this situation. So what did he do? If we continued reading, Absalom held a meal. He was having a sheep shearing, which was something they would do in those days. And he wanted his brother to come because he plotted to kill him. So he invited all of the brothers to it. He even invited King David to come just to throw him off so that he wouldn't think anything was about to happen. But of course, David said, "No, I'm not going to go." And then, of course, the plan unfolded. Absalom worked and then plotted and schemed until finally he gave word that he was to be killed as soon as opportunity arose. And that is exactly what happened. Amnon was killed that night by his brother, actually not directly, but by the servants of his brother. And then he fled from his father, David. Now, I want you to notice something about this happening. He had taken his bitterness too far. He was upset, and that's understandable. But his dad was in a really precarious position. He was trying to figure out, how am I going to punish this boy for what he has done? He's trying to handle the situation, and it was very difficult. But Absalom took matters into his own hands, and not doing what you would call eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth, he actually killed his brother for what he had done. And see, this is the thing. He is growing bitter. He is growing rebellious, and his life is beginning to spin out of control. You know, saints, sometimes when really bad things happen, such as this, there are no easy answers on how to deal with it. There are no easy answers. Now, there's going to be one group that said, hang him from the highest tree, string him up, burn him at the stake, let him have it, throw the book at him. Then there's going to be another group that says, no, well, we can't do that. We need to show him mercy. But David was the father, and David is trying to navigate through this whole difficult situation so that he can answer what has happened. But Absalom just grew more angry, and he grew more and more rebellious. You say, well, Brother Robert, what did he do? He used his good looks, because he was a nice-looking man, as we are told, who had really long hair. He had really good charm, so he could charm the people. And he began to try to win the hearts of Israel over to him. He had been put away from his father for a number of years, but then Joab schemed a way to get him back in Jerusalem. And he utilized this time to win again the people's hearts to himself, until he eventually plotted to overthrow the kingdom and take it over from his own father David. As a matter of fact, he did all kinds of horrible things in the sight of all of Israel. Now, to give you an idea how this man had charm, and to give you an idea how this man looked, we are told in the scripture that his hair would be cut each year, and that his hair weighed somewhere, when you do the math over from shekels into pounds, 3 to 5 pounds per year. Now think about that. That is a lot of hair, isn't it? That's a lot more than I've got, right? Amen. 3 to 5 pounds. So his hair was a big deal to him. When he would cut his hair, it was an event, and people would probably come to even see it go on. And his long, thick hair became a symbol of his rebellion. And saints, a lot of times when people will begin to rebel, there is a symbol to the rebellion. They will do something that you can look at that and say, okay, what does that mean? I've looked at people before that they would have 3 or 4 rings on a hand, and they'd be really big rings. And I would wonder to myself, what does that mean? Or I would see somebody maybe wearing the same type of trinket around their neck over and over again, and I would wonder, what is the significance of that? I've seen men wear earrings in both ears, big hoop earrings. And I would wonder to myself, what is the significance of those earrings? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to communicate by that? And see, things can become in our life a symbol of our rebellion. And that's what was happening with Absalom. His hair began to grow out. It grew out in a crazy kind of fashion, and it was that symbol in my mind. You see, he plotted to take over the kingdom from his father. As a matter of fact, David wrote Psalm chapter 3 as he was running from his own son. Now think of how crazy that was. He's running from his own son. His own son's going to kill him, and that was the thing. What ended up happening? They were chasing after him. David's men got the upper hand. David said, whatever you do when you catch my son, show him mercy and bring him back to me. But that is not what they did. You see, he was riding through the woods and he got caught in a tree by his hair. And it hung him up between heaven and earth by his very hair, by the hair of his head. And when the soldiers saw him in this situation, they came over and they killed Absalom. They killed him. Against David's wishes, they killed him. You say, what had happened? How could such a man who very easily could have probably risen to the throne if he would have just waited, he could have went to the throne, he could have been what he wanted to be. Why do you think this happened? You see, he allowed his bitterness to become rebellion. And this is what happens to people. Something happens in their life. Maybe somebody does something to them. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe things don't go a certain way and they get angry at God. Or maybe they get angry at their parents. Or maybe they get angry at a situation. And before you know it, they begin to get rebellious against God. Have you ever seen it happen, saints? They get upset, they get angry at God, they're mad, situation went a certain way, and it didn't go their way. And saints, how we react to difficult situations in our life is vitally important. I remember one time I was painting over on North Delaware in Independence, and I was up on a really tall ladder. And I remember being up there, and I've got the paintbrush going, and people are probably going, look at him, this is about to be it. It was going to be the end of him any minute. And around my head started buzzing a really big bumblebee. Now, I want you to think about this situation. You're at the top of this ladder, and this thing's going whoo around your head. And a thought occurred to me, and I've never forgotten it. This bumblebee may not kill me, but my reaction to it very well could. I get to getting crazy up here trying to get away from this bee, and it's going to be all over. If it stings me, that's going to really hurt. But if I try to get crazy, my reaction to this bad situation could be terminal, could be fatal. And saints, a lot of times that's the way life is. We go through difficult situations, very difficult things, and you wonder, what's the right answer? And saints, listen to me. Some situations are so complex that there is no right answer. You need to know that from the beginning. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. There isn't a broadband antibiotic that's going to knock it all out. If you do this thing, it's going to offend this group. If you do this thing, it's going to offend that group. So at the end of the day, what the enemy masters doing is putting us in these situations where there is no easy answer and someone is going to be upset. Look at the situation David was in. Here's his son, Amnon, his oldest son, who has committed this terrible thing against his own daughter. And here is Absalom, another son, wanting his father to do something, wanting him to take revenge. Well, what was his idea of revenge? Obviously, nothing David would have done short of capital punishment would have sufficed for Absalom, unless he would have killed him. And David was not going to do that. He was not going to kill his son. Why? Because he loved his son. And saints, listen, sometimes situations can be like that in our lives. And we as people, we as Christians in particular, need to be aware of these difficult situations because the devil uses them to destroy people. Now, I want you to see this. This is what the devil did to Absalom. He used a very difficult situation to cause him to get angry, to cause him to get bitter, to turn him rebellious, and then destroy him. The Bible said that rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is like iniquity and idolatry. And the devil has a way of doing that. Saints, I look back over my life, and I was talking to my wife about this before service. I said, there have been many times in my life that I have had to make really difficult choices. I remember as a teenager having to make very difficult choices that to this day at 54 years old, I still don't know what the right answer was. And I had to make a decision. Have you ever been there? You have to make a decision. You can't just let something go. There's got to be a decision made. I think about times in the workplace where there would be difficult situations that would happen, and I would have to make a decision. And believe me, it's not going to please everybody. If you think you can make a broadband decision that's going to please everyone, you are sadly mistaken. And when you get that one person that's not pleased by the decision, how that person reacts is going to be vitally important. What if they become rebellious? Well, I tell you, it's just the company doing it to us again. And then they get rebellious, and if it keeps on going, it can ultimately end up in their demise. I think about in family. I think about when my kids were smaller. It reminded me of a Andy Griffith episode where Andy's having trouble with Opie. Something's going on, and all of a sudden Barney starts in with something like this. Well, if I had a son, I'll tell you what I'd do. And I remember Andy just stopping him. He said, we can't go down this road with your imaginary son again. When you have a son and you have a child, then you can speak to the situation. Because right now you have no idea what you would do. You don't even have any children. So how do you know how you'd react in this situation? So Andy wasn't hearing it. But saints, a lot of people have never put themselves in the position that decision maker is in. I wonder if Absalom ever stopped to say, I wonder what kind of position my dad's in. I wonder if I were him, what would I do in this difficult thing? I bet his heart broke. I bet he can't sleep at night. But he never seemed to think of it that way. All he could think about was getting his way and his revenge. And when he didn't get that, he became rebellious. And you would think that throughout all this situation, that now here's Absalom. He is chasing David, the king. He's ran him off. He's taken over at Hebron. Now he's the king, at least in his mind. And he's trying to run the show. You'd think that David would be like, well, when I get a hold of that boy. And that's what people wanted him to do to Absalom. That's what Joab and his group wanted. See, they didn't want to see Absalom have any mercy. So when David said, bring the young man to me, they weren't hearing it. It's like, no, don't listen to him. You do what I tell you. When you see him, kill him immediately. That was against the king's word. You say, what was going on there, Brother Robert? Again, people not thinking about if they were in that situation. Here's a father. This is his son, Absalom. And now he's about to lose another son if things don't go right. So what ended up happening? They killed him. Word got back to David. You see, David loved Absalom just like he loved Amnon. When Amnon was killed, he grieved and grieved and grieved. Now Absalom is killed. You see, even when Absalom was away, he grieved every day for him. He was gone for years, but he grieved for his son. You see, when Absalom died, here's what David said. Absalom, Absalom, oh my son Absalom. He just cried. Oh, my son Absalom. I can almost hear it in my mind. Oh, Absalom, Absalom. Oh, my son Absalom. Would to God that I would have died for you. And he just cried and cried and cried. And his men that had been fighting in war are looking at him, and they're not thinking, oh, there's a grieving father. What they're thinking is, oh, see, he didn't think anything about us fighting today. All he's worried about is his son. And see, so then Joab goes to him and says, well, I'll tell you what, you need to go down and encourage the men because they're about to revolt. Because here you're crying about your son dying, and they've been fighting in this battle. You see, it is very difficult, saints, to understand the heart of this loving Father. And there was no decision that he could ever make for some people that would be right. But when I look at it, I see the heart of God in David. David was a man after God's own heart, which means that there were times in his life where his heart would beat in step with God's heart. What you were seeing was David doing what God would do if God were David. But a lot of times, saints, people just don't understand it. They want to see revenge. They want to see a pound of flesh. They want to rebel. Absalom rebelled. The devil lied to him. The devil began to tell him all kinds of things and just stir the rebellion in his heart until eventually he was riding through the woods, got caught by his hair, and he was killed. Saints, sin will always take us farther than we want to go, and it will always keep us longer than we want to stay. You never go wrong when you act on the side of mercy. There have been times in my life where I didn't act in mercy and I just acted in the flesh. I reacted. Where if I had it to do over again, I would have done it different. I would not have reacted that way. You say, why is that? Because mercy and love always prevails. Scripture said love never fails. He became rebellious. Why? Because of anger. The anger turned to hatred. He began to hate his own brother. And saints, listen, we've got to let things go, even difficult things. You say, well, Brother Robert, you don't know what's happened. Well, no, but I know what I've done. I know what kind of sins I've committed. And I need mercy. I need forgiveness. And saints, listen, we have to be merciful. We have to be willing to forgive. You see, the rebellion destroyed Absalom, but his father loved them both. He loved Amnon and he loved Absalom. I wonder if Absalom would have known Dad loves us both. He would give his life for both of us right now. He's in a tough spot. Saints, this is the thing. And a lot of times we just don't understand the difficulty of certain decisions that can happen. But our response to them, going back to my analogy of being on the ladder, could destroy us. You know, sometimes pastors are faced with very difficult decisions that the people will never understand. Because oftentimes they don't know all the details involved. They don't know everything that's happened. And usually there's always that one piece of information that's confidential, that if you knew it, you would think different. And saints, my attitude is oftentimes people want to jump to conclusions. People want to jump and just do something, get angry, get upset. What do you think, Brother Robert? I said, let's just hold off and see. There could be something that we don't know. There could be a piece of information that we're not aware of. And if we just go reacting, we just go getting angry, just becoming rebellious, then we can certainly miss out with God. Absalom could have been king. Absalom could have been just like his father. But instead, the devil used a difficult situation to destroy him. And saints, we can't let the devil do that in our life. And we have to teach our children and our grandchildren these things. We need to set them down and say, listen, kids, in your life, There are going to be times you go through difficult things. There are going to be times when you go through things where there are no easy answers, and you're going to be very disappointed. And there are going to be situations that are so crazy that there are no answers. How you react to those is going to determine a lot about your life. If you get upset, if you get angry, you could be destroyed. And use Absalom as an example. There were no easy answers. Certainly David wasn't going to kill his son. That wasn't going to happen. That was never going to happen. And see, this is the thing. And we need to instruct him because the devil uses this. I wanted to title this message tonight, One of the Devil's Devices. This is a clear device of the devil that he uses. Getting people walk out of church. Don't even serve God no more. Say, what are you upset about? Well, this certain thing happened. Do you not realize the circumstances of that? Did you ever think about it? No, I just knew this piece and I just got mad. No, that's the devil. That's the enemy. Because the enemy wants us to lose our faith. He wants us to give up and quit. I just want to pray. I think I've said enough tonight. Father, we're so grateful that you are a God of wisdom. Lord, even as we have studied it in James, Lord, your word said, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God.